All right, last thing. We spend the last part of the show here, and if you guys were here at the beginning of the show when I was asking where everyone is from, obviously we are a tourist state. Most of the guests that come out here are not from the area, and so we always spend the last part of the show and just kind of try and familiarize people with the only venomous snake that we have in South Dakota. And that way, if you ever come out, like when you're hunting or something, or if you ever come out during the summer, you kind of know what we would have that you might want to have to actually worry about. We are fortunate up here. We only have one type of venomous snake, and it is a rattlesnake. And the only type of rattlesnake we have is what they call a prairie rattlesnake. And for around here, this would be an average-sized rattlesnake. All right, they can get bigger than that, but usually when animal control brings them out to us, or if we go into town and we remove them from people's yards, it's very rare that we get rattlesnakes much bigger than this. Okay, so like I said, very common or very average size.
What do you do with the ones that you remove from somebody's yard or something?
Keep them, and we use them for shows.
Oh, okay.
We have, right now, I have about 80 rattlesnakes, and I switch them out every day with another rattlesnake. So this guy is not going to be in a show for, well, till next summer, probably. We also keep about 80 to 100 cobras, and we switch those out every day. So that's why I should have said that before. That's why I say sometimes I bring a cobra out, and it's much worse than what you guys saw here. Other times I bring them out, and they're even more laid back than that one. So I should have said that before when I was explaining that.
So is this putting a lot of stress on them being out here? Is that why you're doing
that's the biggest reason why we try and switch our snakes every few days. Now some of them are harder to get large numbers of them. Like the Crebo, since it's from South America. I'm sure it's a common snake down there, but it's a lot harder to sit there and import that thing over and over. So we only carry like 8 of those. And the pythons, same thing. It's hard to house 80 big pythons, so we only keep about 6 to 10 of those at any time too. So.
Is that rattle always going? I mean, is it?
No, this one just happens to be a real wound-up rattlesnake. Some of them will bring them out and they're reluctant to rattle at all. Other ones you'll hear them rattle the entire day, even while they're in the box. And so, I mean, you get a lot of. It actually brings up a very good point. Each snake has a different personality. Not all rattlesnakes are going to come out like this, striking and things like that. Some of them come out and they're very laid back. Probably also a female, which also explains that.
How does it depend on the age of when they rattle, or they just rattle whenever?
They are born with a rattle. They have a segment on the rattle anyway. And they will use it, from the very get-go. Obviously, a newborn snake is so small that you're not going to really pick up the buzzing noise from it, but nonetheless, they do have a rattle, and they will shake their tails as a nervous reaction. So.
Now, are all rattlers that reluctant to attack? Like, it keeps moving away from you?
He has struck probably 7 times.
But he's trying to get away from you.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too. I brought that up with people. I had one out a few days ago that wasn't striking, and I was trying to show people that, and I actually held my foot over it, and it constantly was trying to get away. I hate saying it like that because I don't want you to assume that all snakes are going to get away from you. In most cases, they will retreat if given the opportunity.
Right.
But you can't always rely on that. You always have to be aware and willing to assume that snake is not going to. Just to be on the safe side is my point for that. There's no certainties within reptiles. And I'm sure other people that work with other animals would probably also agree with that. But I can only really speak for reptiles. There are no certainties in it. If the snake, if this rattlesnake bites me, I can't guarantee you that it'll inject venom. If it does inject venom, I can't even guarantee you that it would be a real bad reaction or a good reaction. That's a questions we get a lot of times out here, and people hate it because they want a yes and no and a black and white answer, but it's just unfortunate you can't do that. They'll ask, well, how long do you have till you die from that snake? And I can go, well, 20 minutes or never. You might not die from that cobra bite, even if you don't get attention for it. So I mean, there's so many things that play into that, and it's hard to give yes and no and black and white answers with them.
It doesn't seem to have much of a strike
1/2 is a very good strike distance on these guys, and that's pretty much what you could expect from most of the venomous snakes in the U.S. It would be about a 1/2 strike distance.
You mean 1/2, what do you mean by 1/2 strike?
1/2 of that snake's
Oh,
body
this-
length.
Oh, I see, okay.
I don't suggest, picking that snake up, stretching it out, okay, it's gonna go about that far, and then put it down. Should always probably, like on one this size, you should probably always keep at least 3 to 5 feet between the two of you, just to be on the safe side. And obviously, if you come across some of the real big rattlesnakes, you have to adjust that. You're gonna wanna be 5, 6, 7, 8 feet away from them, just to be on the safe side with it, so.
Now, isn't the purpose of the rattle to warn?
We take it as a warning, and I suppose you could, and when I explain this, you'll be like, yeah, it's the same thing. I say it's an alarm system. Snake's alarming other things of where the snake is at, probably to avoid it, not get stepped on and things like that. It might also startle a lot of animals. I mean, it is a pretty vivid or a very pronounced sound, and it's possible to, cause other animals kind of freak out when they hear that and bounce away too. But alarm system is the way I like to explain it. There's also a lot of people ask about the segments on the tail too. I'll just kind of explain that. The way it's making noise, these segments are linked together, but they're loose fitting, so that when it shakes, all the segments are bouncing off of each other, and that's where the noise is produced. They add a segment every time they shed their skin. A healthy snake will shed up to 15 times in a year. So, if you ever hear that old myth where the snake, you find the age of the snake by counting segments, it's false. Theoretically, you could have a 2-year-old snake with 30 segments, or it's also made, the other way you can say it, it's also made of the same stuff as your fingernail, so it's not real durable. You could have an 8-year-old snake that only has 2 segments because the rest of them broke off. So you find nothing out but counting segments on the tail.
Do you recommend getting the dogs the rattlesnake vaccine?
There's not enough proof to where it helps. It doesn't harm them, so I mean there's nothing wrong with doing it. It's just they haven't done enough documentating of it and making sure that it works. I actually had a vet ask me that, and I explained that same way to her. I mean, she kind of agreed. She said, yeah, we don't quite know how effective it is. It doesn't harm the dog, obviously, so you can do it. But they wonder if it wouldn't even matter either way with it. So you can also just, some of them, and I don't know if they do it here in Rapid anymore or not, they used to do actually training with your dog. They take a rattlesnake, and it's not mean to it, they scotch tape its mouth shut. And then they train your dog in different ways to avoid the snake. I would imagine a lot of pets, think that's a toy. Like, oh, sound, yay, and you grab it, and they're getting bit and stuff. But you can do training for it too. That might even be a little more effective too. I don't know why you have to. You could do any type of reprimanding. I'm sure you could use a reward system too with it. If you guys want, we have gone right at about 35 minutes, which is pretty close to normal. You're welcome to leave. You guys were welcome to leave the whole time. I wasn't keeping count. Tell me I was. You're welcome to leave if you want to continue on with the rest of the tour. I said before, some people are on schedules and things like that, so feel free to take off. Otherwise, you guys can stick around. I'll bring that python back out. You guys can come up and pet that if you want and see what they feel like, or if you have questions, answer those too.